Today, on Potential Prospect, we will be taking a gander into the early life and career of Benoit Denis, also known as BSD or God of War. So without further ado, let's get right into it. BSD was born December 18th, 1995. He was born and raised in Nimes, France. He comes from a large family, being the oldest of 5 brothers. His father was a French army officer who was pretty good at judo, and his mother was a teacher. Like and subscribe. Much like his father, BSD practiced judo from the age of 8 all the way until he turned 16. He practiced in his home country of France, as well as traveling to Germany from time to time. BSD had been good enough to get his black belt, and to stay in shape and have fun, BSD would partake in the sports of soccer or football, depending on where you're watching this, as well as playing rugby. Continuing to follow his father's footsteps, he would become a member of the 1st Marine Infantry Paratroopers Regiment, as well as being in a unit in the French Army Special Forces Command. All of these are respectable groups in the French Special Air Service, also known as SAS. BSD had fought terrorist groups in Mali, which is generally in West Africa. He was awarded the Medal of the Nation's Gratitude and the Combatant's Cross in September of 2017. He would eventually leave the army after 5 years of service in March of 2019. BSD originally started MMA to improve his SAS close combat skills, and he would test himself in the Invictus XV 8-man amateur tournament, where he would win the first 2 matches by submission and beat the last opponent, who had professional experience, by decision. This would spark inspiration to see how far he could go in MMA after he leaves the SAS. Shortly after he left the military, BSD would make his professional debut in Lions FC, fighting Marc Dumont in February of 2019. Much like his amateur fights, BSD would destroy the competition after sinking in a guillotine choke. Just 1 month later in March, he would fight for the SFC belt in his second professional fight, fighting the champion Artur Sezipanak. This would be a harder fight than his last, but BSD is a hard man to break, and in the 3rd round, he would find the rear naked choke and get the tap 3 minutes into the 3rd round. After getting his first belt, BSD would stay active and fight again just 2 months later in June. His opponent would be Antoine Benjamin. This would be a cakewalk because he would sink in a guillotine choke in the very first round. BSD would finally have a full training camp and fight again in October, this time facing off with Imbragim Basarov. This would turn out to be more of the same. Basarov would be no match for BSD because he would take his arm back to the locker room after sinking in an armbar. Just 2 minutes into the fight, BSD would fight just 3 weeks later in Brave FC, fighting Powell Collette. This would be another tough fight for him, but no one would end up winning after they clashed heads in the 2nd round, leaving his opponent unable to continue. Therefore, the fight would get chalked down as a no contest. After getting somewhat of a blemish on his record, BSD would take the rest of the year off and fight again in January of 2020, this time facing off with Ivica Truset. Once again, this would turn out to be a walk in the park because BSD would find another knee bar submission in the very first round. BSD was looking like he would be the next big thing coming out of France, but he still had a long way to go, to prove that to the world. BSD would take his next fight in August of 2020, facing off with Mario Said. This would not be another 1-round fight for the war veteran, but he would still find the knockout in the 2nd round in spectacular fashion. Fast forward to March of 2021, BSD would fight again. This time his opponent would be Luan Santiago. This was a fight that would go just as his previous fight. No walk in the park, but it was obvious who the better fighter was. BSD would continue his finishing streak by sinking in an arm triangle choke and getting the tap in the 2nd round. BSD was on fire and had no intention of slowing down anytime soon. He would take his next fight in August of 2021, facing off with Arkait Godari. This would end the same way as his previous fight, but in much faster fashion. BSD would sink in another arm triangle choke just 3 minutes into the fight. After all of these finishes, BSD would catch the attention of the biggest promotion in the world, the UFC. They would have BSD jump right into the deep end. On October 30th, 2021, he would fight UFC veteran Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. This was a back and forth war that tested both men. Some argue that the fight should have been stopped because BSD was dropped and wobbled multiple times in the 2nd round. I highly recommend watching the second round because it was insane. Everyone who watched the fight knew that BSD was one of the toughest fighters with insane heart, but he would end up losing this legendary scrap by unanimous decision. After getting his first loss in his career, he would finally take some time off, eventually fighting again in June, fighting Nicholas Stoltz. This is where the UFC fans would notice how good he was on the ground, as well as how much power he had in his hands. In the second round, he would sink in a rear naked choke and get the finish. After getting his first win in the promotion, BSD was hyped up and ready to fight again. In September of 2022, this time he would face off with Gabriel Miranda. This would turn out to be another dominating performance because BSD would get the knockout just 16 seconds into the second round, as well as getting the knockout. He would also get a $50,000 performance bonus. BSD would sign up to fight again in February of 2023 with Joe Selecki, but this fight would be cancelled. He would then sign a fight on July 1st, this time with Vince Pichel, but Vince would pull out as well, and another up-and-coming fighter would step in to challenge the Special Forces veteran. Ishmael Bonfim would be that guy, and they were still set to fight July 1st. This would turn out to be his fastest finish in the promotion at the time, sinking in a nasty rear naked choke at the end of the first round. After getting the first round finish and gaining more and more fans, the more he fought, he would waste no time in taking another fight. He would end up fighting Thiago Moises in September of that same year. This would be another crazy fight that tested both men, but 4 minutes into the second round, BSD would drop Thiago and rain devastating ground and pound shots until the ref stepped in and stopped the fight. BSD and Thiago Moises would get awarded a $50,000 fight of the night bonus. After getting another knockout on his resume, BSD would fight another heavy hitter who has flown under the radar to a lot of fight fans, Matt Steamroller Frivola. This was a highly anticipated fight that many people felt like would be a war that would leave one fighter knocked out on the canvas, but once the ref said fight, it was a one-sided beatdown. BSD would throw a high kick and knock out Frivola just 1 minute into the first round, getting yet another $50,000 bonus under his belt. After getting all of this hype, BSD would fight on one of the biggest cards of the year, UFC 299, as well as taking on his toughest challenge. He would be fighting the fan favorite and former interim champion Dustin the Diamond Poirier. This was a huge fight and it would not disappoint. BSD was landing big shots and landing often, but Dustin is a tricky fighter with some of the best boxing in the sport. Just 2 minutes into the second round, Poirier would land a straight left and stumble BSD. Poirier would then follow up with a right hook that dropped BSD and landed one huge shot to finish. BSD had fallen short of the win and got finished for the first time in his career, but BSD and Poirier would get awarded yet another fight of the night bonus, making this his fourth bonus that equals out to $200,000. Just in bonuses that doesn't count his fighting salary. And that brings us to this weekend. BSD would be fighting another fan favorite with very tricky grappling, Renato Moicano. It goes without saying that Benoit Saint Denis is a very talented fighter who has accomplished a ton in his life. He has the potential to be champion because he is still only 28 years old. He has had 13 wins with 2 losses and 1 no contest. He has 4 knockouts, 1 in the first round and 3 in the second. He has had 9 submission wins, with 6 of those happening in the first round and 2 subs in the second round, with 1 of those submissions in the third, leaving his finishing percentage when he wins at a perfect 100%, which is insane. But he has lost once by knockout and once by decision, so it goes without saying that he is a kill or be killed fighter. As much as I love watching Money Moicano win and listening to him ask for his green card and how much he loves America, I think BSD is too strong of a puncher who also is high level on the ground, which will cause a ton of problems for Moicano. So I'm going to pick BSD by knockout in the second or the third round. After Moicano's gas tank goes out, comment below who you have winning this crazy fight. If you have watched the video this far, be sure to like and subscribe, as it is the only way to support the channel. I hope you guys have a great week and enjoy the fights this weekend. Bye.